Good evening, and you're welcome to our World Cup coverage on a day of historic importance for Ireland. In less than an hour, we line out against England in Cagliari and take our place in the World Cup finals for the very first time.
Still in play. What? For Lineker, oh danger here! And Lineker almost there! And Gary Lineker is there! And England are in front! Won by Butcher. Now here's Sheedy. Sheedy's won it back and Sheedy shoots! Oh, it's there! And Kevin Sheedy, who's enjoying his best period in an Irish shirt, has right out of nothing conjured the equaliser.
Gary, very different to the game in Stuttgart when England got the early break and you must have thought it was going to be decisive.
Well, we hope so, but of course the Irish, they showed tremendous spirit. They just kept battling and putting the long ball into the box, and I suppose eventually it paid off. A bit disappointed to have lost the extra point, but hopefully it'll mean both teams can get a good result in one of the next two games and both of us go through.
It's a game we couldn't afford to lose. We've got to go in against Egypt now, and if we can beat Egypt, we've got 3 points, and then we can go against Holland, and we'll see what happens against Holland. But we needed 2 points now against Egypt.
Yeah, this is the Classic Game Club. We're looking back on Italia 90, the Republic of Ireland against England. This is usually the segment where we go back and pick an amazing game from history and revel in how marvellous it is. Not the case this week. We've picked a fairly mediocre game, I think it's fair to say, to go back and watch, but it's memorable for all the narrative around it, for, I presume, Nathan and Ger, a load of unbelievably happy childhood memories for you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Eoin. You've just ruined all of those memories with a cold dose of reality. We're going to have to rename this segment as the game we watched so you didn't have to, because, dear God, that first 45 minutes was the longest 45 minutes of my life.
No.
You cannot disagree with that, Ger. You cannot come up with a hot take and be a contrarian that this was actually
I'm not being a contrarian. I'm not saying there were loads of bits of reasonable football being played. You got to see
where
Kevin Sheedy was really good. Ray Houghton was excellent. Paul McGrath was sensational. Like that England team, when you look at the quality of the footballers that are playing in that England team, bear in mind that this is not about football being shit in 1990. The weather conditions are absolutely atrocious, which they bang on about repeatedly in the interminable opening to it. So it's gale force gusts of wind. Like I actually didn't think it was as bad as it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, given how the cold, clammy hand of hindsight from Captain Hindsight's Sheehan there. That's the received wisdom now. It's like, don't bother watching this game. There's no point to it. But actually, I disagree. There's loads of stuff going on here.
What do you remember from the time when you guys both watched it live, or from the moment live? Was it the ecstasy of Italia 90, which initially made you feel that everything that happened from an Irish perspective was just great?
Well, I also made the mistake of watching some of the post-match reports, which put me really in the mood for it. And so after that, everything that you're watching is like, this is cool. I did definitely have that dread. The overwhelming feeling was that dread that England are going to do to us in this game what they threatened to do to us in Stuttgart but couldn't score. And so after they went 1-0 up, I remember being terrified that they were going to score and a floodgate somehow would open. Because you're 13, you don't really have the knowledge that actually Ireland are a really good football team and have loads of brilliant players on their side and are men and are going to stand up no matter what happens in this game. And so they did. But I definitely, that was the thing that was, the recall was the fear that, Gary Lineker's good at football. There's John Barnes, there's Waddle, there's Gascoigne. Brian Robson's actually playing in this match too. And they have Beardsley. Jesus, what a team.
What do you remember, Nathan, from your live experience?
I was only 8 at the time, so my actual memories of the game are the celebration of when Kevin Sheedy scored and right on the full-time whistle, not hanging around for any post-match analysis. I didn't really care what Eamonn Dunphy thought. All I knew is I now wanted to be Kevin Sheedy. I didn't care if he was an Everton player. All I wanted to do, myself and my next-door neighbour, one of us was Packy Bonner, one of us was Kevin Sheedy, and we just played for the next 3 or 4 hours. It was just the joy of the occasion. So most of my thoughts on the game are sort of built on probably everything I've read about it and I heard about it down through the years, and the celebrations and the walking down roundabout and all of that sort of stuff and everything that followed and the win against Romania. The actual 90 minutes, I have no memory aside from Kevin Sheedy's goal. I have no sense of watching it with any sort of tactical eye. I was just a kid knowing that something big was happening in my house, that my dad was bloody excited. It wasn't quite, my first footballing memory was, I'm fairly sure I was six probably, Euro 88, Ireland against Netherlands, and it was the first time I ever heard my father curse. It was the first time I'd ever heard the word wanker.
Wow. Who was the wanker?
I'm fairly sure it was Wim Kieft. Yeah.
Right. Or the referee for not, giving the offside as it would have been in Euro 88. Was this not the moment, Eoin, where you were convinced of Andy Townsend's greatness or Ray Houghton's greatness? Or Paul McGrath, more importantly?
Yeah, Paul McGrath in midfield, sensational. I think, I don't know who was actually man of the match. I mean, we'll get into secret man of the match later, but I presume it was Paul McGrath. And at least I think I saw Jack Charlton say afterwards that Paul McGrath probably deserved the award afterwards. It's pretty tough to pick one, though, is it not? It's pretty tough to be unbelievably impressed, sure, by anybody in the Ireland midfield. Of course, like Houghton and Townsend have touches of class here and there, but that's all it is. It's glimpses. It's almost like when Wes came off the bench in recent days and had a touch or two of unbelievable quality that we didn't have in other areas of the pitch. It was just like that constantly throughout the 90 minutes where there was little glimpses of the Irish players, because all they did was lump ball forward to Cascarino, and that was the tactic. And the wind carried the ball a little bit too far in the first half and didn't carry it far enough in the second half. That was
I know. I think you've been conditioned from the criticism to think that there was definitely. So it was interesting. I thought it was interesting to see Liam Sheedy pick the ball up on
Kevin Sheedy
in the kind of inside. Sorry, exactly.
It was Kevin really interesting to see Liam Sheedy appear.
Oh Jesus! Right. Has anybody else found their brain power diminished over the course of this whole lockdown?
It's okay. I kept calling Michael Jordan.
Out of your ears.
I kept calling Michael Jordan Michael Jackson in last week's basketball podcast, so that's okay.
Well, that's potentially libelous, I suspect.
To who?
Oh, God.
Well, you can't libel the dead.
Let's move on. So when Kevin Sheedy was picking the ball up, it was interesting to find that occasionally he was drifting over into the inside right position, that he wasn't actually an out-and-out left, I'm going to hug the touchline winger, that there was a bit more fluidity to this Jack Charlton setup than Laurie McMenemy would have you believe, or the hype around the team. They obviously weren't trying to pass the ball out from the back, but they were a high press team who were not letting Gascoigne settle, not letting Waddle settle, not letting Brian Robson settle on the ball. And I'm taking into account some of the conditions, but Ray Houghton was brilliant, like a brilliant ball playing midfielder who was dangerous every time he got the ball, and so nasty and aggressive as well. It was great.
My thoughts are maybe somewhat affected by the Ireland-Italy match from USA 94, which we covered recently on the Classic Game Club, and how impressed I was with how Ireland played in that match and how often they did get the ball down and in midfield. And listen, it was a midfield with Roy Keane in there, that there were a lot of periods during that game, conditions obviously far better and complete extreme from what we saw in the England match, but there were lots of different areas you could look at where they tried to play ball. It was nowhere near long ball. They didn't have a Tony Cascarino. They had a Tommy Coyne up front. But this was just, as you say, when you look at the quality of the two midfields in that game, Ireland could have offered so much more. Now, maybe when you look at what Ireland's ability was of McGrath, Houghton, Townsend, Sheedy, you would think, yeah, they should have done. But that English midfield, that's an English midfield Steve McMahon couldn't get into. Steve McMahon at that stage was part of an all-conquering Liverpool side. That English midfield of Robson, Waddle, Gascoigne and Barnes. Barnes has just won Footballer of the Year for the second time in 3 seasons. He's pretty much at the peak of his powers. So maybe, and I don't think Jack Charlton never had any other thoughts, but maybe the right thing to do was to just put them under a bit of pressure, to get at them and not give them any time in the ball and not overly think about what we're going to do when we had it. Because there's no question those players, those Irish players, could have done a lot more. And in comparison to what they did against Italy 4 years later, they did little or nothing, I thought, in this game.
Definitely. Just for context here, the three of us have been watching the game from Archive Eurosport. So we had Peter Brackley and Laurie McMenemy into our earballs rather than George Hamilton. The game is going to be on TG Cahir this Friday night. So there might be a bit of George Hamilton goodness in that. So I dare say Brackley and McMenemy are going to come up. Just go through the teams, as Nathan mentioned, a star-studded England team. The commentators refer to Peter Shilton as the best goalkeeper in the world. He's 40 years old at this point. He's in goal for England.
Lies.
It's a back four of Gary Stevens, Terry Butcher, Des Walker, and Stuart Pearce, as you mentioned, that star-studded midfield. Chris Waddle, Paul Gascoigne, the captain Brian Robson and John Barnes, Peter Beardsley and Gary Lineker up front. They both get taken off for Steve McMahon and Steve Bull, respectively. Steve McMahon comes on and basically is a delight for Ireland. He has a shocker when he comes off the bench. The Republic of Ireland then, Packy Bonner in goals, back four of Chris Morris, Mick McCarthy, the captain, Kevin Moran and Steve Staunton, Ray Houghton, Paul McGrath, Andy Townsend and Kevin Sheedy in midfield with John Aldridge and Tony Cascarino up front. Alan McLaughlin comes on for John Aldridge after 64 minutes. It's an excellent team. Like, go on, Ger.
The Alan McLaughlin fetish. What the hell was Jack Charlton thinking? How in God's name are you bringing him on at that stage for John Aldridge in this game when we're chasing a goal? It made no sense. It made absolutely no sense.
With Niall Quinn sitting there on the bench.
This might have been. Was this his debut? Was it? It was certainly his.
I think he'd won cap going into Italia 90.
Yeah, and this is the first game of the World Cup, and you're giving him half an hour out there. And like, look, obviously he goes on to have a moment in time that is hugely important for Irish football history, but that was not the time to be throwing him into that. Oh, they won't have done any research on you. Off you go in there, and it's like, well, my teammates don't know how to pass me the ball because they don't know what kind of runs I make. That didn't make any sense to me.
Well, maybe that's why, as Larry McMenemy said, Jack Charlton is the master strategist.
Yes, I mean, they were buddies, weren't they? McMenemy and
how much time there was a part of the most enjoyable part of this was maybe the fact that we were watching an English commentary, because what patronizing pricks.
Yes.
Oh my God. So watching back the RTE commentary would have probably been a more nostalgic feeling and a warm feeling and getting to the moments that we all remember so well. But this was somehow how the English looked at us. 2 years, pretty much to the day after we had beaten them, they still looked at us as some little pygmies that tried our best, despite the fact that our players played for their champions. They played for the exact same clubs. They still had little or no respect. Larry McMenemy, 30 seconds before Kevin Sheedy scores the equaliser, is berating the Irish supporters for having a little bit too much expectation, getting a little bit ahead of themselves, a little bit cocky, thinking, they could come to a World Cup for the first time and actually do something. How dare they? They weren't really getting behind their side in the way they really should. Piss off, like.
Yeah, it was glorious actually to listen to that. I'm like, this all looks very familiar. There's a goal coming here, and they're starting on about us, our expectations being too high. It's funny how the tyranny of empire ruins even the nicest of individuals like Larry McMenemy.
What were our real expectations in 1990? Like, surely Stuttgart changes everything, does it not?
Well, so I don't have a memory of the time of the expectations, but obviously you can look at that 11 and the quality is there. But you look at Ireland's form around that time, it was touched on in commentary, 6 goals conceded in 28 games. In the 3 years before Italia 90, Ireland had lost 2 matches between friendlies and competitive games. They lost to Spain in qualification, and obviously at Euro 88, they lost to that unbelievable Dutch side. They'd beaten Spain during qualifying. They'd beaten England at Euro 88. They'd drawn with France and West Germany in the previous year in friendlies. They'd beaten Brazil a couple of years before that. So if you take away the fact it's a debut experience at a World Cup finals for everybody, like, the pedigree is there both in terms of players and results, that there should be a reasonable level of expectation.
From that team that day as well, we're missing Ronnie Whelan, David O'Leary and Chris Hughton are on the bench. They're both on the bench. They're both, neither of them are selected for this game. But like, Ronnie Whelan being out, how big a deal is that?
Well, it's a huge deal because he breaks his foot and only gets fit for the Egypt game, I think. So, like, a fully fit Ronnie Whelan changes everything, because then you put him in. Now, according to the commentary, they were going to take Kevin Sheedy out and play Ronnie Whelan on the left side, which, wasn't an unusual position for Ronnie Whelan to play in club football. But for Ireland, what we could have had was Ronnie Whelan in the middle of midfield alongside Townsend and pushed Paul McGrath back to centre back, where he was legitimately world class. And that takes Mick McCarthy out of the team, and that vastly improves the team, in my opinion. How did you think Mick McCarthy played, Nathan?
Well, I thought his throw-ins were just stupendous.
Yes, exactly. His throw-ins.
God, there was a lot of.
I agree.
Now, he wasn't the only guilty party. Like, he was by far and away the most guilty party of just murdering the ball consistently. Never got to grips with the wind as to how far he should hoof it forward. There was no magnet to Tony Cascarino's head. It was straight over the top of Tony's head. And that maybe is when we're getting into sliding doors moments of how that team would have looked differently if you had a centre-back pairing of Paul McGrath and David O'Leary and Ronnie Whelan in the middle of midfield. Perhaps it could have been a totally different experience in terms of how they played the ball. But McCarthy didn't do anything wrong defensively. There was one brilliant tackle laid on or in the second half on John Barnes. But Steve Staunton was as guilty at times. Like, you compare again that game against Italy in USA 94, where Staunton time and time again is getting on the ball. He's picking out the runs of the midfielders, playing it into the centre circle. Jesus, the aimless hoofing again and again.
Staunton's 10 years younger than McCarthy. He's 21, and McCarthy is the captain at 31, and he's the tone
But he's
setter,
twice the ability.
Well, he does, but I'm sure at 21, he's a little bit nervous playing in the World Cup, and he looks over and sees his captain, hoof, and he's like, well, I mean, that's what I've got to do. It's exactly my job. Now, in fairness, that's also the football culture at the time. There's a bit in the second half where Brian Robson gets the ball and hoofs it, and Laurie McMenemy was like, that's exactly what Paul Gascoigne should be doing. That's what wisdom gets you. That's what experience gets you. And it's like, what? I mean, Ireland have the ball again, and we're about to attack. Why is that the right thing to do? But so look, there's a mix, right? There is the football culture of the time, and I think that if they had demanded a bit more from Steve Staunton, he would have been capable of delivering that. Look, it is absolutely sliding doors moment, and maybe we should start with that. Like an Ireland team with O'Leary, and I'm just checking the age profile. So O'Leary was 32, and Mick McCarthy was 31. So it's not a significant difference. I don't know if O'Leary was fit and still first choice for Arsenal at this stage.
No, I think at that stage he was sort of in and out. I think Steve Bold and Adams were starting to form their partnership, but he was still, as you say, he wasn't mid-30s David O'Leary. He could still contribute.
Yeah, and I mean, Kevin Moran is 34, and there's no doubts about him being in the team at this point. So, like, it's definitely a conservative selection in the squad. When you go back and look at the squad, like, John Byrne is in the squad, David Kelly is in the squad, Bernie Slavin is in the squad, and Frank Stapleton is in the squad. So that's 4 players in your very small World Cup squad that aren't going to see a meaningful minute unless there is an absolute crisis. And you know they're not really going to see a meaningful minute because Aldridge is going to play almost everything. And it turns out when you're taking Aldridge off, you're putting on Alan McLaughlin, who no one really knows anything about. Like, was there room for Liam Brady in the squad, I wonder, like, to come on and change games, to be the Wes Houlihan for 10, 15 minutes at the end of matches?
But he didn't want a Wes Houlihan to come on. He wanted an Alan McLaughlin.
I know, and so that doesn't make any sense. Parts of Big Jack's strategy are absolutely perfect. It's an in-your-face, front-foot aggression that the whole country can get behind. It's our sporting identity, the Fighting Irish. As much and all you might hate that, we are definitely a team who likes to be on the front foot. Even in rugby, even as the most cultured of the rugby teams we've ever had, it's an aggressive line speed and defence, and it's being creative off the back of that gets us there. For our boxers, with the exception of Andy Lee, almost none of them were counter-punchers. Most of them are wearing you down, all-action styles. You think of Wayne McCullough, you think of Steve Collins. Like, our sporting culture is getting up and being in your face, put them under pressure. It's perfect. The bit that misses after that is the little bit of finesse that this Ireland team had and just couldn't get out.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of make the point about Ronnie Whelan before this game and how pivotal that is in terms of our enjoyment of this as a classic game. I actually don't think it affects how this game looks as a piece of entertainment. Does it affect Ireland's chances of winning a game? Of course it does. He's one of Ireland's greatest ever players, but I think he fits into the Charlton system. And it's, as you say, it's the drips and drabs he might have picked up in this game, a bit of magic dust might have created something a little bit different, because I just don't see how different personnel being available would have persuaded Jack Charlton to go out with a different game plan against this England team.
No, I don't even think the inclusion of Ronnie Whelan would have dramatically changed the match. And maybe we are underestimating the impact of the weather and just how wet and thunder and lightning and miserable it actually was to play in. And England's midfield, I thought Gascoigne was brilliant and Waddle had flashes, but like Barnes was quiet as well, except for parts of the second half, that maybe it was just very difficult to get on the ball. Now, everything we've seen from Ireland over the rest of the tournament suggested that they had no other game plan. But I wonder, and I know there's clips of Dunphy post-match, but I wonder how much support there was for Dunphy in terms of criticism for the style of play, or was the vast majority just to be happy and be there for the ride? Like, they touched on, Ireland hadn't been beaten since November 1988, so for almost 2 years, and like everything I went through, there should have been an expectation. We're going through teams of greatest Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal teams with John Giles at the moment, and there's Irish players of this generation in all those teams that they had the quality. They had the quality to go and bring it to the English if they wanted. But the fact it was absolutely no effort. It was.
So I don't think there's no effort. I actually think that when Houghton has the ball, he's not hoofing it to the back post, trying to get somebody to win a knock on and win the second ball. He's getting the ball and he's looking up and he's finding Sheedy, and Sheedy's finding Townsend, and Townsend's flicking it to McGrath, and McGrath's like that. From midfield forward, we are playing football. It's just that we haven't been encouraged or conditioned to do it. Like, bear in mind the difference between us absolutely going for it and playing football is a place in the semi-finals versus a place in the quarterfinals. And even then, we probably would have had to overcome the home nation to get there. I mean, maybe if we'd gone through the front door, you have England's route, you've got Cameroon in the quarterfinal, so perhaps you end up beating Cameroon. But there's no guarantees. So, like, we're looking at a historic level of achievement from this group of players and nitpicking to see what the alternative would have done. I don't think we were going to win that tournament. I mean, I don't know. I think Argentina would have beaten us, and I think Germany would have beaten us. But, you know, strange things do happen in knockout football. So in terms of my recollection is that most people thought Dunphy was a bit of an upstart, and he was not right, but like, you know, it's kind of entertaining what he's saying, and we're going to at least tolerate that. But then we reserved the right to call him a bollocks at the end of it.
Was there a national lack of belief at that stage? Because I know in Declan Lynch's book that he wrote around Italia 90 Days of Heaven, he said that Jack Charlton was the only man who had less belief that Ireland could win the World Cup than we had ourselves.
I mean, yeah, I like, when you were asking about the expectation, again, I don't know, I'm 13, so it's not like we're kind of having these conversations that are like, I've done my research here, and well, actually probably I knew every team because the Italia 90 sticker book. Yeah, which you know, you filled that, of course. But I don't think that everybody thought that we were going to go there and win. Like, you know, you're a small country, and even in 2002, I kind of had to be talked into in advance of the tournament what our chances were. Like, look, it's a World Cup. I mean, you just forget that you're going up against Brazil and Argentina and Italy, and these are teams that we've never played. Like, so we played 3 games in Euro 88, and the first game was a fluky 1-0 win, and then the Dutch were a great team, but like, did they fully play that well against us? And we played really well against Russia. So like, they were the only big games in a tournament that we played. There was also a fear that we were going to freeze somehow, just because we had no experience of it. I guess the short answer is it's complicated.
I want to come back to Dunphy in a little while once we get into the aftermath of this, because there's some great audio that we want to play you. But just to actually go through some of the categories of this match, thankfully the match doesn't actually have a whole pile to throw up. If you had to pick your moment of the game, what would it be? Like, Sheedy's goal obviously is there. Like, Lineker's goal is barely worth mentioning. It's such a bizarre happening within the game. Like, is Paddy Bonner to blame? Like, Chris Waddle deserves a hell of a lot of credit for...
Where's Big Mick? I mean, I know Nathan is a big Mick fan, and he's kind of wedded to defending him at every available opportunity. What the hell is he doing getting caught?
What are you on about?
From the right wing. I mean, you're love for Big Mick. You're basically his last remaining booster in the media at this point.
What are you talking about? I honestly don't know where this has come from.
I think
somehow you're trying to use what happened in Saipan to question his performance 12 years earlier. That somehow there was something deep rooted in him, even then, that meant he was going to cut up for our country at a crucial moment.
I did think he gets caught under the flight of the ball. You know, I'm not sure. I don't think Paul McGrath would have got caught under the flight of that ball. I think McGrath would have headed that away, and it would have been 0-0 after 9 minutes, 8 minutes, and away we go.
It's a ridiculously good ball from Waddle.
It is a good ball. It is a good ball. Waddle was good in patches, but like, they put him under pressure. That his first possession is passing the ball out of touch. My moment of the match is obviously Gary Lineker having a shit. Like, when you see it now and you know what's happening, and he's looking up going, I've shut my pants. It's like, and then for the next 5 minutes, you're like, who's he touching with those fingers? He wipes, bending down. He's bending down to wipe, and the camera picks him out and then goes away. You're like, no, don't leave. We need to see what's happening. Why is Gary Lineker on the ground again, wiping his fingers on the ground? Like,
but before coronavirus, there was Gary Lineker's shitty hands.
Big Mickey went to first.
I really wish Larry McMenemy. I really wish Larry McMenemy picked up on it, and we got a full Larry McMenemy commentary of what was actually happening here. But it's a strange thing. I'd forgotten it happened in this game actually, but it's very, very obvious at the moment. And even the teammates, after he tells them what happens, they're like, "Okay, Grant, game face on." They don't blink twice. They're like, "That's fine. Our teammate has just done this thing. We're going to carry on." But yeah, the oblivious commentators is the biggest missed opportunity.
I'm walking away though. Yeah, there's a chance that Barnes has a little bit later on that fizzes across, and he kind of throws his body at it. If he got a header to it, it was going straight in. I mean, like heroic levels of working under the circumstances. Where if any of us shot ourselves, we wouldn't go to work. I'd like to think.
Well, he was at work at the time. Like, do you stay at work? You're in the middle of an interview. You're in the middle of an interview, Ger. You've got Lance Armstrong on the line. What do? Do you keep the interview going?
Hello?
I mean, yeah. I suppose it's once in a lifetime, right?
What's going through his head? Like, when you know it's happened. Like, obviously, it's a different time. So it's 30 years ago now. So there's not quite as many TV cameras, and there's not quite, you're not going to be plastered all over Twitter 2 minutes later and 50 million people have looked at the video.
It's still the World Cup.
But still, you've got to worry that when you go to your post-match interview and you decide to be patronising towards the Irish, that the first question is going to be, yeah, they didn't try very much, but at least they didn't shit their pants.
Were you a bit nervous, son? Was that it?
Big Mick made him nervous. Big Mick made him nervous.
Here you go. It'll work out. You did kick the shit out of him a couple of times, which I was quite happy about.
If I had to just pick one other moment of the match before we move on, it's just that run from Chris Waddle late in the game where I think it's a penalty.
It's Gaza.
Gaza punching. Who does he?
No, it's Gaza who makes the run. It's not Chris Waddle. I'm nearly certain. Yeah.
Is it?
Well, because there's too much pace
for the penalty.
Yeah.
What could have been a penalty?
Yeah.
No, that's Waddle. It's Waddle is the one who's fouled and he goes down injured. There's no replay.
Yeah, where he gets flicked up in the air. It's not. It's because it's number 19. He's got 2 numbers on his back.
No, but you're thinking of a different incident then.
Where he dribbles past 4 players and Mick McCarthy kills him in the penalty area, gives away a penalty, and the referee doesn't give it. That's the incident, right?
I think yes, that sounds exactly like it is. But I was 99% sure it was Chris Waddle because it was down the right wing, and the commentator says it's Chris Waddle. And we've got
and the camera goes to Chris Waddle.
Yeah,
it's down the left wing is the one I'm talking about.
Okay, different incident then.
Okay.
But I think there were only clearly 2 moments of magic dust throughout this. John Barnes as well. That it is a game where something like that was just going to break out, and maybe it was one moment of magic he was going to win it, but that's about it. But you might have to pick out Waddle's run as perhaps the classiest moment of the match. It's really slim pickings.
Yeah, again, I think you have to probably give a lot of credit to Chris Morris and Steve Staunton, considering they're going up against Waddle and Barnes, and both of them have flashes. Waddle more so. But as I said, Barnes is Footballer of the Year at this stage and is week in, week out destroying teams in the English First Division. And in the first half, he barely gets a sniff of the ball. Second half, once or twice the ball breaks in his favour and he gets to stretch the legs properly. But generally, Morris, every time he gets it's on top of him. And because of the way the cameras are, they all seem to be on one side of the pitch. You see it in the first half quite a bit when Waddle gets on the ball. Like, instantly, Staunton is on top of him. Townsend is coming across. Houghton's there as well. They knew that they just couldn't let him get a run. But as you say, there was 2 or 3 times in that run for the penalty. I don't know how we never saw a replay. It does look like he was absolutely clattered.
Like, you'd wonder, was it like in the middle of the commentary, they're like, well, Laurie McMenaby's screen has gone off because a bolt of lightning has hit his monitor. I wonder if another bolt of lightning came and hit the production box, and they're like, we actually can't get a replay for this.
But we should point out as well that Ireland should have had a penalty.
Which incident is this again?
So about 90 seconds, 2 minutes after Lineker's goal, there is a far more clear-cut penalty where Des Walker capitulates Ray Houghton. He just goes straight through him, cuts him in half. And because the ball, it's one of those where the ball sort of flicks on and there's a half-hearted shot at the end of it, the referee just allows things to continue. But it was a nailed-on penalty.
Play an advantage, isn't that how that works?
It
Fruity tackles, definitely, you wouldn't get away with today. There'd be several red cards if Michael Oliver was to re-referee this one. Actually, I liked our shirts. The referee in the matches, the post-match reports of the pubs around. But I'm there for those jerseys.
Yeah, one of our nicest ever, possibly our nicest ever. Before we get into those sort of things, just our secret man of the match from this, I think, as I said at the top, Paul McGrath was mentioned by Jack as his man of the match afterwards. Lads, I'm not sure about the whole Steve Staunton hate here. I think he's a contender. You've mentioned Chris Morris as well. I think that Ireland's fullbacks both had an excellent day at the office, as well as Ray Houghton.
The beauty of Paul McGrath is, again, having watched him 4 years later at Giant Stadium, where it's a backs to the wall job and maybe over time has been blown up to be something it's not, but you know that the legs are gone, the knees are gone. There's 2 or 3 occasions where you're watching in the first half and you're, is that Paul McGrath sprinting at full speed, marauding through the midfield, where he just turns and twists and turns his body that, like, 18 months later he's probably not able to. And you rarely, if ever, have seen that side of Paul McGrath. It is the defensive linchpin who can play the right ball, who can craft things from the back, but actually skipping around challenges, injecting a little bit of pace is something we rarely, if ever, saw from McGrath. So that's something that stood out. I thought the man of the match was Gascoigne. Pretty much every time he got his close control in what looked to be unbelievably difficult conditions. His ability to float 25, 30-yard balls over the fullbacks again and again. Probably played a little bit deeper than they would have liked. So it was picking it up a lot off the 2 centre halves, where you would have thought maybe you leave that to Robson and you get him into a more number 10 position. But because Beardsley was there, he probably ended up playing a little bit deeper than you would have expected. But I just thought every time Gascoigne got in the ball, he was class.
On the file that we watched with an hour and 30 seconds gone, Gascoigne gets the ball in the left wing spot and dribbles like really close control around about 4 people into the penalty area and gets completely upended, like does essentially a 360 in the penalty area from Mick McCarthy and the referee waves play on. Is that the incident you guys are talking about?
Oh,
it's 100% Gascoigne.
No, it's Chris Waddle.
When does the Waddle one happen? When does the Waddle one happen?
Down to the left hand. It's in the second half, isn't it?
Yeah, it is in the second half, and it's definitely down the right hand side.
It's down the right hand side.
It's before the equaliser.
Okay. No,
in and around the equaliser anyway. I thought it was after.
The equaliser.
Gascoigne is sensational, and I think the one thing that probably doesn't do him service or the event service at all is the fact that the television quality just isn't great. Like, I'm not sure is it the audio recording, but the atmosphere sounds fairly shite. You can barely hear the anthems at the start.
The anthems are screwed up. There's definitely they've killed the mics, but it sounds like the God Save the Queen completely drowns out Aaron Levine from what I can see, which is a bit like, come on, lads.
Well, there's also quite a bit of noise, I think, in fairness, during God Save the Queen.
Hopefully.
I couldn't tell whether they turned it down. On Gaza, again, Laurie McMenemy, who was in some ways the star of the show of this game, mentioned that Gaza had lost 2 stone in the previous 12 months.
For giving up chocolate.
He giving up chocolate and drinking that funny stuff. Like, is he talking about fizzy drinks or
beer?
Because I don't think he had given up the funny stuff.
Homemade hooch. Is that what it was? Lineker absolutely kills Big Mick in a physical challenge at one point, gets around and slides the ball through for Brian Robson, who is about to be in a very difficult situation, and McGrath just shepherds him, doesn't even put a hand on him, but because he's so big, you're thinking these two obviously know each other incredibly well, semi-responsible for ruining each other's Manchester United careers in some way, or certainly from Robson's perspective, slowing him down with the collective enabling that happened in their lives. And it was just a beautiful piece of nonchalant defending from somebody who was cleaning up somebody else's mess. But I thought that was interesting. That Lineker was actually a really good player.
Yeah, do you know what's incredible? It turns out that there was some sort of player cam at this match. I didn't think they had that sort of technology back in 1990, but Jer has clearly watched this in some sort of Mick McCarthy cam, where for the entire 90 minutes he has sat there Taking notes. Taking notes.
Just-
What's he done this time? What's he done this time?
That was
Yeah,
interesting,
Lineker was a proper fox in the box. Lineker in that match. I don't remember him touching the ball outside the penalty area too often.
Like, I'm not even sure if he touched the ball for the goal, to be quite honest with you. Like, the touch is very clandestine. I think it's fair to say for Lineker. Like, in fairness,
chest.
but like you got
Good on his chest.
yeah, but like at first look, you're like, how did that even come off Gary Lineker? You almost need the replay to actually see it. Just in terms of stuff that was trending at the time that jars now. So we might just start from like the vantage point of 2020. What wouldn't work today? So the things that jarred with you, like it said so much. Back pass rule, obviously worst thing in the history of humankind. Terrible thing. The throw-ins, which we've already mentioned, for Mick McCarthy. Both teams.
We should do more of them. Do more of the throw-ins. Like, honestly, there was a couple of times where I was
Oh my
like,
God.
Field, just like, come on.
The first throw in about 2 minutes in down the left-hand side, where
Nearly scored.
He takes advantage of the wind that sort of swerves just as it's coming to Shilton and nearly goes straight into the top corner. Like, if that had gone in, Mick McCarthy's a superstar. This guy has reinvented the game of football. How has nobody ever thought of doing this before?
Can you score?
That could have been what people remembered from.
Are you allowed to throw it in? Does it
You are, yeah, but it has to bounce, I think.
And do we know, like, did he do a clinic with Rory Delap to encourage him to do this?
Again, I don't understand why we never took any advantage of Rory Delap's ability when he was there for us. Like, it was, again, I'm all about our sporting identity. Like, I had no problems with the long throw-ins.
You just had a problem with the thrower.
Exactly. I hate the sinner, not saint. Sin. Whatever that is.
But one of the things of its time and still relevant now is that you look at modern goalkeepers, the likes of Ederson and Alisson, like, they're very much a creative force for their team. They start off an awful lot of attacks. And we were similar in Italia 90. Like, they had Gaza as their main playmaker. Our main playmaker essentially was Packy Bonner. Give it back to Packy, get that bit of grit and determination in his jaw, and hoof it as long as possible. Like, that was, by and large, our main attacking threat. And in fairness, it worked.
I'd say if you were a fullback in that Ireland team, you would have automatic grounds for workplace bullying. Packy Bonner shouted at me and he aggressively screamed in my face like no other person's ever screamed in my face. I would say that if you're Steve Staunton or Morris, you'd be able to have that legitimate complaint. At the end, when he's telling everybody to get up the pitch, I'm surprised his molars don't crush in front of the cameras because he's gritted his teeth so hard. He's a terrifying goalkeeper when he's talking to his defenders, telling him, get out of the way, I'm hoofing this ball.
On his Donegal Mount Rushmore, they should have his face grimaced. That would
100%
be the most appropriate. I just thinking about another Donegal man. Jim McGuinness was obviously in the papers during the week talking about how his players weren't burnt out. That was a mental thing, and also saying that he thinks that final frontier for tactics in football is actually kickouts. And I'm thinking, there are no new ideas, it turns out, in sports. Jack Charlton was already there with the tactical kickouts.
Yeah, that's for sure. Put it right in the head of Cascarino and they were away. Just a couple of things that would sit well in 2020. You've mentioned the Ireland jersey. Like, if we could just, there's no need to be making any new jerseys ever once you hit that point in 1990. It's absolutely perfect. And then the other thing that would obviously sit well, given the current situation with the pandemic, is Chris Waddle's hair. That is lock-in hair, if ever I've seen it. That mullet was a sweet, sweet mullet. We are all going to be looking like Chris Waddle from 1990 in about 4 weeks' time, I dare say.
Yeah, it's coming.
Aidan's had his haircut. Did you not get your haircut?
No, I did not. No. I'm going.
You just didn't put any gel in it the other day. You'd full afro.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm going to go full on Chris Waddle at some stage. It was impressive. He was a heck of a player.
Yeah.
Spurs should really have won something around then. Now, I know they were going up against a great Liverpool side, but for the season when they had Lineker, Gaza, and Waddle, they probably should have done something.
They didn't have Lineker, Gaza, and Waddle.
Not have them in the. No, but sorry, Waddle wasn't even there in Italia 90. Waddle had gone to Marseille, but the previous season, Gaza's first season at the club, did they not have the three of them then?
No, because Lineker not at Barcelona? No, Lineker's gone back. Maybe you're right. Gaza.
Google away there, Ger. The live Googling with
get off the.
You're right.
There we go. Thank you for vindicating football correspondent Nathan Murphy.
Waddle is at Marseille there, so they do have Gaza and they do have Lineker.
Yeah, and your point is that they should have done more. Like, is there anything else from the game? I want to get into the aftermath. I want to get into the Dunphy stuff here. If you've got after you've got any last thoughts.
No, go for it.
So obviously,
there's the Waddle injury. Okay, I'm just getting to that now.
So talk us through. Give us your live breakdown of the Chris Waddle Stonewall penalty here.
Well, do you know what happens? It's the camera cuts to the sideline and the entire stadium is stunned because they're like, "Who's that little guy with the dark hair is warming up?" No one recognizes. It must be Alan McLaughlin because we don't know who it is. And then it's just before that the Waddle thing happens. I've rewound it too long here, so I'll tell you in a second. Morris Setter's looking dapper in his suit on the bench. In the long line of very important assistant managers in Ireland, we didn't realize it, but this was the start of it. After him, there's Taff, Roy Keane. Robbie can't. Oh, he picks it up on his own. He picks it up on his own half and does the Waddle thing. He does the Waddle thing that Kev tried to mimic, but oh wow, Waddle, what a player! This is amazing. He just falls over himself. Feck off.
No, it's a foul.
That's a dive.
We got away with it.
Nailed on.
I don't say, just on Setters. Like, he has the longest conversation ever with Alan McLaughlin before he comes on. He's talking to him for a good 6 or 7 minutes, and it keeps panning to him. So he's obviously the Alan McLaughlin whisperer. If we were wondering for how Alan McLaughlin, how he was fetishized in that Ireland team, obviously Setters had something to do with it. So that's the answer to that question.
The referee's telling Chris Waddle, "Get up. Nothing wrong with you there." I can't hear Larry McMenemy giving out about how his Geordie boy has been taken down, but it looks to me like he's just twisted his ankle. He's overthought it there, but that's a good run. That is a good run. Gazza's run in the second half, after the goal he scored, is in a shorter space of time and is more taut and dynamic. And there's a Stonewall penalty of that one where Big Mick comes out and just. So they could definitely have won a fair result, I think we'd say.
Absolutely, and I would say that we were elated with that, and rightly so. But it was obviously a few days later, once we rock up to Egypt and don't exactly get the job done. That's when things start to go a little bit sour in the television studio. And then it's the game after that, obviously, when it comes to the third game of the group, when Billow has to actually apologise for Eamonn Dunphy's behaviour in the previous game. In the interim period, Eamonn Dunphy is after getting on a plane to Italy. So we'll play the audio from the Netherlands game.
Ever since our studio analysis of Sunday's game, there's been a lot of comment on what was said by our panellist Eamonn Dunphy, whom, as you know, is in Sicily now. And only yesterday we saw Jack Charlton saying he would not talk to someone who had said he was not proud to be Irish. We can only surmise that Jack was told that Eamonn had said this. It is not true, of course. Eamonn did not say that. We'll show you in a moment just exactly what he did say. But before we do, let me say that we want this controversy to come to an end so that we can all concentrate on the team and on supporting them in the World Cup. So, what did Eamonn really say? Here it is. Eamonn.
I felt embarrassed for soccer, embarrassed for the country, embarrassed for all the good players, for our great tradition in soccer. This has nothing to do with the players who played today. That's a good side. I feel embarrassed and ashamed of that performance.
Would you go as strongly as that about it?
John never goes as strongly as me on anything, but I'm thinking of men like him, Tommy Eglinton, all the great players we produced, Peter Farrell's, the great football, the Liam Brady's, the Ronnie Whelans, the David O'Leary's. This is a great football and country produced players and go out and play that rubbish.
Yeah.
You don't even need to see that. That is the guttural expression of throwing a pen across the studio.
I love the gravitas of Billow. Like, he's talking there like Miriam coming on in prime time on the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, updating the death toll. That we've all had a bit of fun. We've all gone with the Alpha's been delayed, but now things have got really serious. This is my address to the nation. Eamonn has done something bad. I'm just going to speak slowly. Was Jack right?
Or, hang on, Eamonn's produced some gold, right? How can we gratuitously replay that again to get everybody who's watching to tune in for our pre-match analysis? How do we rile everybody right back up? Well, some people have said that he said he was ashamed to be Irish. What did he say? What did he say? Here we go. Play the hits, baby.
It's the first time I had really stumbled upon pure showbiz in sports broadcasting. I was like, wow, this is a really, really important vehicle for actually getting the nation talking.
And they're all in on it. Like, Gilesy doesn't turn and go, hold on a second there, Eamon, don't bring me into this. Don't bring me into this. You're on your own. It's like, no, I'll let him go. This is going to be good for business.
They're all well in on it. And then, as I say, Dunphy goes to Italy. And we have this amazing footage online of Dunphy in conversation with Jack Charlton, or really actually Jack Charlton talking about Eamonn Dunphy. The audio quality here at the start is going to sound a bit bad. What it actually is just an actual dictaphone playing its audio at the start, but then you'll hear the voices of Jack Charlton and Eamonn Dunphy.
I said that the style of play didn't reflect the qualities of the players in the side, and that it was embarrassing and shameful that an Irish team with players like Ronnie Whelan and David O'Leary and Paul McGrath should be playing in this style, and that finally against Egypt it was revealed to be bankrupt. I've been one of his biggest supporters. You have? Because I believe in pragmatism, and the guys who I wrote a piece for the Sunday Times a few weeks ago, which was almost an apologia for him.
I didn't stop him sit and listen to the questions that were being asked. I just wouldn't answer the question from him.
Can you comment why that is so?
Well, I don't like him. And I don't have to work with people I don't like. I think he's a bitter little man.
I've been a journalist for 12 years. I've written a best-selling book. New York Times best-selling book.
This is my favourite beef in the history of Irish football. It's the most unintentionally funny rivalry that there is. Like, I'm not sure could you make it on the dictaphone audio there. I work for the Sunday Independent, 900,000 readers. Like, all he was missing was the word baby at the end of that sentence.
Yeah. At that stage, I stayed alive for 48 years, baby. He didn't quite have the showbiz. He had the arrogance. He didn't quite have the showbiz at that stage. You would even you would never get a manager being quite that honest now. I don't like him. Simple as that.
To use this classic question, who won the argument, Eamonn Dunphy or Jack Charlton?
It's a good question, right?
Is it still going?
Yeah, because you both think that the Ireland team could have played better football, and that, and so Giles must have been making exactly the same argument sitting right beside him. It's just that it has become associated with Dunphy because that's the gift of the showman, is to become the center of the story and the center of the argument. But in fairness, he did beat the drum for a long period of time. And who won the argument? We've never got close to a World Cup quarterfinal, except when, well, I don't know, we could have gone through on penalties against Spain, right? So maybe that's not true. But since then, we've been once in our lives. Well, that was Big Mick's fault. We all know that. Didn't practice penalties. Didn't notice how Belda had a twisted testicles. Spain were down to 10 men. And anyway, sent our best player home. Do we mention he sent our best player home before the World Cup? That was great management. Great bloody management. I think it's a draw. I would actually say in stereotypical Irish fashion, it's a 1-1 draw. Jack Charlton, parts of his management career were brilliant. Part of his management career, probably a paucity of ambition limited what he thought we were capable of doing. In the greatest tradition of Irish management, we never really think that we're good enough to go out and do a bit more than we are. But he certainly managed to get us playing front foot football, and that really worked for our character. And maybe because most of those players who you say are all in the greatest teams of the Premier League era, or John Giles has seen, none of them played in winning Ireland teams. None of them had that experience when they came to Ireland. It was a bit ramshackle. There were selection committees. There was favoritism. The hotels were rubbish. All of that stuff that actually Charlton manages to get over that, unify the team, give them an identity. And again, the first person through the gap is the one who gets the credit. So he definitely wins that part of it. But Dunphy was also correct. We could have done a little bit better. That's the truth.
Nathan?
In a way, put him under pressure, and that intensity has been a defining characteristic of all brilliant football down through the years, particularly in recent years. Like even Barcelona tiki-taka, it's press high up the pitch. Liverpool in recent seasons, suffocate the opposition inside their own half. Don't let them out. It was what happened when the ball came back and when they did that and they did the hard part and they put them under the pressure and they had that bit of time that again and again Mick McCarthy and Kevin Moore and Steve Staunton had in the back four that day. They could have actually done and picked out better passes, had a completely different style of play when in possession. But I think part of what he was thinking was certainly the right way. Like Dunphy, in a way, you'd have to say both of them probably won because Jack is so revered. But if Dunphy hadn't stood up that day and gone on that rant, would we look at Irish football the way we do today, where we're never happy, where we constantly, maybe more than any other, it feels more than any other footballing nation. I don't see they have this conversation in Scotland or in Wales around style, that it's not just about results, that somehow even the victories aren't enough for us, that we want something bigger, something greater, something better, something out of John Giles' eye of a beautiful style of football that we feel we've rarely, if ever, touched over the last 30, 40 years, despite the quality of players, that he allowed us through that rant to be constantly questioning of what we've seen, which is a good thing, because we don't just sit there and go, whatever served up, we'll take it. People are prepared to go, won't say out on a limb for Wes Hoolahan, but people are prepared to be passionate about Wes Hoolahan and even look back in the Martin O'Neill era and the Trapattoni era as well as they did at times and say, they made these massive mistakes. Instead of just moving on going, well, listen, that was fine. We got good results. You know, we're a little nation, the corner of Europe. We've only got 4 million people. What more can we expect? That actually standing up and asking the question at that time when it was so unpopular allowed us all then for 30 years on to make a career out of just ranting and raving as well.
Everyone's a winner, baby.
Ill-informed ranting and raving.
It is interesting, right, when other journalists come over to cover Ireland and from other countries and they're like, you guys are so negative. What's with all the negativity around your team? And it's not just with the football team. Quite often it's with the rugby team as well. People are often asking, why are you so negative about the team? Maybe it is a legacy of 900,000 copies and that exact audio where we heard from Eamonn Dunphy, baby. Final question, underrated, overrated. What are you going for as a classic game, England against Ireland's Italia 90?
Look, I think it's a historical artifact, and to be rating history is like, was World War One or World War Two? Were they good wars or bad wars? How would you rate them?
World War Two is by far like as in terms of archive footage,
superior.
Yeah, without question,
far superior war. Right. I'm saying that this is an underrated moment in our history, and actually, I think you guys all think the game is completely unwatchable, and I disagree with that. So I'm saying it's underrated. I'm saying that you guys have the Dunphy poison, toxicity of that rant has infested you all with this kind of inability to just sit and enjoy this moment where it's a World Cup. That's the first game we ever played in World Cup history, and the tension is unbearable. And we dig it out against England, our biggest ever rivals.
And their best player.
They were patronising us in the commentary.
And one of their best players shot his pants.
Yeah, literally. It's amazing. 10 out of 10.
It's a real story of hope what Gary Lineker's gone on to achieve in his career since then, to become probably the most highly paid, biggest star in British television after having that in your pants is quite the achievement. Listen, this is the classic game club, and Vinnie Perth was on that Ireland-Italy game, and we were making the same point that we're going back and we're analysing in modern terms Paul McGrath's performance a quarter of a century on and trying to pick holes in things. This was about the moment. This was about the occasion. The performance was secondary. Game conditions are not, considering the quality of some of the players on the pitch, was atrocious. I know at the moment there's and this game is being shown on TG Car on Friday night. Let's show every game from Italia 90. No, let's not show every game from Italia 90. It's fine on a Friday night. It's perfectly fine to sit down on a Friday night and watch this. Couple of glasses of wine, get nostalgic. I presume they're not going to have Laurie McMenemy mocking the entire nation. That there'll be something.
I hope they do.
A little bit warmer.
I hope they do. We'll all be like, yeah, give us the 6 counties.
Unfortunately, I watched it at midday without any wine or without anything to just ease the pain and make my life more interesting. This was the longest 2 hours of lockdown so far.
Yeah, and it was only 1 hour and 38 minutes. I'm with you, Nathan. It's overrated as a game. As a moment, it's underrated. As a punditry moment, it is vastly underrated. I think it actually might be Eamonn Dunphy's finest moment if you take into account the second piece of audio we played there, not just the studio with the two boys. That is it. That is England against Republic of Ireland, Italia 90. As Nathan said, it's on TG Car this Friday. A lot of Italia 90s on TG Car over the next couple of weeks. Probably not going to do any more classic game clubs. So do tweet us at Off the Ball. What's your suggestion? What do you want us to watch back? Chat to you next time.